one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Driving me. Hi, Elizabeth.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Jason Tron.
Here.
Victoria Helander Heiser.
Here.
Robin Cleek.
Here.
Wes Pullen here. Matt Jacobs.
Here.
Sonali Patel.
Here. 7 present, 0 absent.
6
Uh,
present.
6 present. It's still 6. 6 present, 0 absent. Does anybody from the public wishes to comment? Going once, twice. Next is the presentation for finance, which by Elizabeth. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight.
Good
And
evening.
congratulations on passing your bond referendum.
Thank you. Elizabeth, is the button on for your microphone? You should just.
It is.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you. I'll wait till. Okay, so tonight I'm just going to give you a market update, look at the options that were discussed before the referendum and the
It's not a
financing
stock market
schedule.
update, is it? That is not
We
too
don't want
good.
that.
Well-
That's not too good.
Actually, when the stock market goes negative, the bond market goes positive, and that's in fact what
It's a good
happened
day.
today. So that is a good day. There's a silver lining for you.
Stock market.
So this is a 5-year look back, and you can see we've been up and down. The goofy thing is, what? Okay, I can do this to music. The rates went up in early October, but then came down with the volatility that we've had with the Brexit continuing to be debated, as well as the tariffs, which thought there was a resolution and then not so much. That negative information on the economy results in investors buying bonds, and that drives the rates down, which is good for you. So that's what we've been experiencing. We've had interest rates come down about 15 basis points in the last 2 weeks, and came down of 1 or 2 basis points again today. This next page shows the year, and you can see the little downturn at the end. Everyone's waiting to hear what the Federal Reserve Bank's going to say this week. But, really, over the last year, since November of 17, we've seen interest rates go up by about just under 1%. So we think the trend is going to continue with higher interest rates. So we think it's a good idea to get in the market now, in January, so you can take advantage of these lower interest rates now, because we expect continued upward pressure. So just to update you, the district's net debt limit is $61.5 million currently, and your working cash bond limit after the approval of the working cash bonds that we did earlier this year is $20 million. Here's a graph of the outstanding debt. We only have a few weeks to go before we know the CPI for the 2018 calendar year, which will tell us what the CPI will be for the levy in 2019. So you can see we've highlighted estimating 2%. Right now, I think it's running closer to 2.1%. But this is just the current situation, looking at the non-referendum bond debt service, where you are after the issuance this summer, and then the current referendum debt service. Here's a graphic of it. Seen it before. So here's a plan, and that's why I handed you books, because I know the numbers are small. So what we're estimating right now for the refunding, and as you recall, we're refunding the Series 2009A bonds for savings, plus small portions of the 04 and 02 prior referendum bonds for restructuring purposes, to allow for the issuance of the new debt without increasing taxes. In fact, it's a tax decrease. So if you recall, pre-referendum, the negative savings from the restructuring was about $3.8 million. It's now down to $3.6 million. Plus, we have positive net present value savings on this. So this reflects the improvement we've seen in the market. Then we have the proposed $13.5 million, which is the first issue, which will help you proceed with your plans to Sullivan School this summer. So we're looking at interest rates that are lower. We still have included a 50 basis point cushion, as well as 75 basis point cushion for 2020, 1% for 2021, 1.25% for 22, and 1.5% for 2023. So my hope is this is the worst case, and that as we go along, we are within those parameters. You can see if we look at the average payment existing is about 707, as we talked about pre-referendum. And right now, we see the average at about 525, or a decrease on average of $182. And that's a little more of a drop than we originally projected. We were looking at about $175 on average. So it just reflects the improved numbers we're seeing today. And here's the graphs that you're familiar with, the existing debt and then the proposed referendum bond debt service post-refunding and new money. The proposed net impact, existing debt service in the gray and proposed new in the blue bars. And then the financing schedule. So where we are is that the county clerk, the Lake County Clerk has canvassed the vote. There is a 30-day protest period, which won't apply to you really because your victory was well beyond the margin of anybody requesting a recount. So that protest period ends December 27th. We've already distributed the first draft of the preliminary official statement and received comments on it. Tomorrow, we will have the bond rating presentation with Abe and Dr. Friedman, as well as Standard & Poor's. We think it'll go well. Hoping to renew that AA+ bond rating that you got renewed last September. Then we will come back to the board on January 14th with two resolutions. One is going to be the parameters bond resolution, authorizing the issuance of $13.5 million of the referendum bonds, plus the refunding. And then you'll also authorize an escrow resolution, which will authorize the bank to act as escrow agent to hold the proceeds of the 2002 and 2004 refunding bonds, which will then pay that off over time, because that portion of the bond is not callable. Those are those small amounts that we're restructuring. The 2009A portion of the refunding will be paid off within 30 days, so those bonds will disappear. So those are the two resolutions. We'll make sure those are in your board packet well before the meeting with an explanation memo. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on the schedule or anything in the presentation.
One question. So since we're doing this in phases, we may choose not to get more money if 4 years from now, for whatever reason, we feel like we don't need to. How does that impact the refinancing of the existing bonds? So, for example, on this slide,
So
the
once
blue stays the same regardless of how much we ask for. Is that correct? So the only thing that would change if we choose 3 or 4 years from now that we don't do anything or ask for more money is the green would just decrease, and then the green over here goes down. But the blue stays the same. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. And so, oh well, forget this thing. But if you go to page 11, you can see that each subsequent bond issue in 2020, in 2021, 22, and 23 wraps around the prior one. So let's say you decide to do less in 2020. It would just shorten up the whole debt structure, kind of keeping it level, and the interest costs would go down.
The refinancing of the existing bond is not predicated on us asking for the entire amount. That is done up front, and then we're done with that refinancing part.
Yes, the refinancing is set up for you as if you're going to issue the whole 48.7. But if you don't, it'll just mean the bonds won't go out as far, and your annual payments will be less.
Okay, thanks.
Good question.
Okay. Any other questions?
Anybody else? Thank you, Elizabeth,
Thank you for
good.
having me, and thank you for putting me in first. Appreciate it.
and congratulations on your referendum passing too. Next presentation is Abe, whichever one you want to do.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. So there are a number of things tonight. Two of the items are procedural. One is the resolution to allow us to retain interest in any of the funds as we see fit. Typically, we allocate that in the Ed Fund. And the other resolution being the fact that all of the funds fluctuate in balance throughout the year, with May being the low point. And we rely on being able to borrow from the working cash fund during those low months for the other operational funds. Are there any questions related to those two resolutions? They're annual, they're done every year.
That's the working cash fund, right? So that we can move money.
Correct, to
Right.
borrow from the working cash
Yeah.
fund for the other funds.
Yes.
Correct.
Are you wanting anything on the screen right now?
Yeah,
No, no,
Oh,
not yet.
Okay.
No.
I wanted to make sure you weren't.
it's a nice graphic.
It's very, very peaceful.
So when we move money from the working cash fund to other funds in order to use that, when are they paid back? When we get the tax for that? Or is there a set time? We borrow, so when do we put it back?
So all of the money is actually invested as a whole. We do account for each fund separately. So as it relates to representing the balances throughout the year, the Ed Fund, O&M, will typically dip lower at certain points. And it's the working cash fund that has the majority of our funds, which we rely on during those low months, if that makes sense. So at the end of the year, the funds are where they need to be.
Okay, so when do they get put back?
Like, do we put
Do
it
we
back?
move,
Like,
so
whatever
you
we
move
borrow?
some money from the
It's
working
like
cash
borrow.
fund to the other fund so that we, as needed?
Yep.
Then do
June
we then-
30th. So
then
at the end
do
of
we
the
move
fiscal
funds
year,
back into
everything
the
is
working
balanced.
cash fund?
Correct.
So when do we move things back into the working cash fund to build it back up? Or is that just builds up by the way the levy comes in and the taxes?
It's, yeah, by the end of the fiscal year. I can dig up a graphic that can kind of show you each of the funds throughout the year and how they fluctuate as far as balances. That might be the easiest way to explain it. Now, as it relates to our treasury reports that you get every month, that represents the balance for each fund. And if you notice in the low months, the working cash fund is the highest. And that's where we draw from for AP, for payroll, and so on and so forth.
And then it just gets built back up as the year goes on, as the taxes come in?
Yeah. Yeah. For tracking purposes, we track every fund separately.
Yes.
For investment purposes, it's in one fund. It's in 4 different bank accounts, essentially. So we're not borrowing from any specific fund,
Okay.
but for reporting purposes, we need to tell you that the working cash fund is the biggest account, the Ed Fund is low, and when it dips below at certain points in the month of April and May before that June payment, we're effectively borrowing from the working cash.
I think I get it now.
There's no
Each
penalty.
fund does not have a separate bank account.
Yeah.
We invest as a whole.
So it's more an accounting thing than anything else.
It's an accounting
Yes.
practice, yeah.
You were saying something
Is there any
about
penalty for moving that money around or letting the working cash
money.
dip below a certain amount?
No, there's no
That's what
penalty.
it's there for.
it?
Okay.
Next, again, Abe.
Okay, an update on the Sullivan Center Kindergarten project. Timeline, we are working to go out to bid again. January 9th is our goal to issue permit documents to the village. There's a village planning and zoning meeting scheduled for January 16th. That's on our critical path to get approval by then. We are finalizing the site design layout as well between now and then. We want to issue bid documents January 22nd. A pre-bid walkthrough would occur on January 29th. The bid opening from all of the subcontractors would occur on February 14th. We have an alternative date in case we get a number of RFIs and addendums need to be issued. There's not enough time. We do have an alternative date for that bid opening to be the 19th. Scope reviews with all of the subcontractors to occur over a week from the 15th through the 20th. And we want to make the March 11th board meeting for the approval of the contracts. Get my pointer here. So it's been a while, but do we recall this site layout? Let's get our bearings. This is the library. This is Sullivan Center. This is the parking lot the library is building. We planned the green to be bus access into and out of the site. This is where they would be staged. Every bus would show up at the same spot every day so the students know where to go. And at that time, we considered this to be the service road to afford us the stacking necessary from Phillips Road for parent pickup and drop off. Now, the village has responded and basically stated that that is a difficult solution to finalize, that this is a better solution for them because there is an easement that they're able to utilize versus having to build this long road. So their recommendation is to connect to Atrium Drive here versus utilizing the library's backyard for the service road to connect up to Phillips Road. So that's what's different now, is that instead of the blue going north, we would connect through this easement going directly east to Atrium. All right, so that's a modification. The second recommendation, let's get our bearings again. This being Sullivan Center, this is the gym and our kindergarten center being here. You can see the stacking of cars leading up to the drive for the kindergarten center. The big difference is that now the traffic is flowing from west to east. Here it's south to north, but eventually it would connect to Atrium Drive here if you keep following my cursor. Now, what happens if we get more than 35 cars? Is there capacity to allow us to stack more parent pickups if necessary? So the conversation we had with the Park District today, and the conversation will continue this Thursday, is an alternative to have as backup in case we need it. It's to utilize this lane, the far access lane, kind of cutting through the skate park. Instead of this, it would be less intrusive on the operations of the Park District and would afford greater capacity as well. So there's two options. One is to relocate that skate park into the green space, just enough to give us this drive lane, or to install a drive behind the skate park connecting here. So that way, when parents come in through the south entrance, they're able to make a big U and create enough capacity to give us more than 35, up to 50 or so. So that's where we're at with that design. We reviewed this with our elementary principal administrative team as well. Pick up on the driver's side. Is that problematic? That's part of the challenge with this design, is that it's on the driver's side. We feel it can be done safely as long as it's single lane and single stacked with a bypass lane afforded on the opposite side. Okay, any questions related to the site?
So
Jason?
when you connect up to Atrium, this will be a one-way coming from Aspen, line up, pick up, and then exit to Atrium? Is that the flow?
Correct. You're coming in through Aspen. You're stacking within the parking lot. You're headed north. You pick up your child, and then you exit through the easement space on Atrium Drive.
There's no exit back out to Aspen. When you
Correct. We don't want to contribute to the already great traffic problems in Aspen.
What about the parents who have to pick up at multiple schools?
So if a parent needs to go to another school after this,
I mean, do we have any idea of start time, end time? Do we have anything like that?
we haven't discussed that as a board as far as the start time, end time. We proposed initially with our internal conversations that it match the elementary schools for
Which
the most
one?
part. Which ones? I believe they're all on the same schedule, with the
but
exception of Aspen. So the same
Okay,
as.
well. All right.
Go ahead, Robin. I mean,
There's nothing, it's just, I mean, that could be a full hour difference. I mean, Aspen has almost a 1 hour difference from town line, let's say. So when we're trying to match it to an elementary schedule, it's which one? But it's not like it's going off to Mars. I mean, it's just going out to Deer Path versus Aspen. But I would imagine in the morning when it's busy, that might take a long time to make a left onto 60 and come back around to the rest of the campus.
correct. And we may choose to talk about this further.
Yeah.
The board decides. Now, a couple other changes during the value engineering phase. We discussed increasing the size of the metal panels as well as the precast panels to save on the installation costs. So preliminarily, here is a rendering of the north elevation, and you can see instead of smaller sections, smaller panels, there are bigger ones. It does not change the look. Some people may think it looks better. I mean, it's something that would be personal. As far as opinion, we feel it still matches the architectural design and the intent we had originally, and saving cost as well. So it's 1/3 of the original metal panel jointing. There is a simplified window pattern, simplified masonry, as well as the precast jointing is also simplified with this recommendation. And the other thing we're working on is with the building automation systems, not being locked into one integrator. We're opening it up to different companies as far as the building automation component. And that's something that Mr. Mike Christensen, myself, and the engineers are working through to create some more competition on the BES side, which is expensive on the front end as well as on the operational side, long term.
I know we had kind of touched on it briefly, but is the solar panels or anything part of this thing, or maybe is that going to come in later, or that's not a part of this? The building.
We had some conversations with DLR as it relates to integrating solar now as part of Sullivan. We had heard that the Park District was integrating solar now. Turns out it's not at the Sullivan Center, it's in their maintenance facility. And so that's what, necessitated us starting the conversation with DLR. So at this point, we've done some conceptual reviews of the existing drawings. We want this project to be solar ready. So when and if we decide to proceed, that the electrical systems, the roof, the structural integrity of the roof, and so on and so forth is all accounted for to allow us to implement solar. So that is something we're working on.
And that wouldn't change the pricing or something that we have to go out to bid for, or
Yep.
change structurally anything else that would raise the prices of, I mean, that we were trying to bring it down. So making the project to be solar ready, would it need some more support system that would cost us, is what my question
Yeah,
is.
at this point, not much. Most buildings are able to, carry the load of panels. So we don't foresee it changing it much at all.
Okay.
But we're taking a look at it to make sure that there's nothing we're missing, with this construction.
Any other questions?
I have one. So for the alternative pickup lane staging options that you presented, are those going to be added to the bid docs? So we would have to so those will be bid out and we'll have costs associated with those when the bids come in?
Alternative staging of
When
the
you talk
cars?
about,
The one that goes
relocating the
behind the-
skate park or
like going behind the skate
creating
park?
the drive behind the skate park.
We're working on getting a more fine-tuned number on the number of cars that we should expect for this building.
Okay.
And if we're comfortable with it being 35, then my recommendation would be to bid it as an alternate, so we have it in our back pocket in case something changes 3 years from now. We have that option later on. However, through our analysis, we find that we're going to get 70 cars or 60 to 70 cars, somewhere in there, as far as pickup. Then we may have to proceed with this being part of the base bid, affording us the capacity we need beyond the 35.
Thank you.
So a number of parents, for whatever reason, choose to park and then walk to the building, pick up their kids and walk back. Would they be parking in that area right there, or where would they go?
I think a great deal, we've had exhaustive discussions related to that. A lot of that would be in communication with the parents early on. And I think after that first week, we develop good habits and good patterns. And so we would want to kind of consolidate a lot of that. But I foresee that first couple of days that they're parking here at the library, across the street. You know, lots of different things are being attempted. But by and large, it would be this area in here, existing lot, would be the recommended parking for parents. Very good. Any other questions? I think we've been through this before. We're ready to get bids, right, and to move forward in this process. Very good. Then the third and last item I have are student fees for 2019-2020. It's a small percentage of our ed fund revenue, about 0.5%, $250,000 per year in student fees. 2 years ago, you remember, we had major increases in student fees. And prior to that, it was 5 years ago. So every 5 years, it seems as though we make a major adjustment to our fees. In lieu of doing that every 5 years and making a major bump in these fees, we recommend a CPI incremental change annually. So there isn't sticker shock every 5 years, and we can keep up with the inflationary costs we have as well. So to correlate that with CPI would be our recommendation annually, while conducting peer comparisons to making sure we're not going above our peers, or we're not falling too far behind either. Lunch prices are driven by the USDA. The Equity in School Lunch Pricing Calculator is what's utilized, and that's going to be a 10% increase this year. The other deviation would be for our 6 to 8 one-to-one tech fees for our middle school. We recommend a $25 increase to maintain school district cost neutrality to offset some of the repairs we have experienced. We feel a $25 increase would keep us neutral with our program. And there is no increase to PE uniforms. Any questions related to this? Now, this is not an action item tonight. It's just a first review for your feedback and comments, and it would be an action item then at the next board meeting.
So the increase in tech fee at the middle school, so right now, there's families have an option to buy insurance.
Right.
Does this replace that, or is this in addition to that?
Replace.
So everybody pays an extra $25,
Mandatory insurance.
so it's basically mandatory insurance. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So because now we have 75 and then we pay 25, which is optional insurance. So now it'll just be 100, but the insurance part
Is
will
included.
go away, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So the ones that are paying insurance now, it's no.
It's not an increase for
not an
them.
increase. Okay.
So these other districts, when I'm looking at the peer comparison average, I have no idea if that's Chromebooks, iPads, what that looks like.
Yeah.
But why are we already higher than them and then going higher? Are they not offering insurance? Are they somehow getting a bigger volume rate on their devices? Like are they just subsidizing more of it themselves?
That would be my guess. It depends on what devices they're utilizing as well. That would play into it. We know that in our situation, we've experienced a shortfall of about $25 in keeping us cost neutral with this program.
And when we're comparing that particular item to other districts, now of course it looks like other districts also have a K-5 tech fee that we have a much smaller one. But when we're comparing to other districts, are those districts also that own the device at the end of it, or are those districts that it's kind of like a rent to own? Because some districts do that, where you pay your fees and then it's yours to keep when you graduate.
Some districts do that. Some choose to have them turn it back in and it gets recycled. There's many different options districts choose to follow. The piece about letting students own it, I think the reason why some districts don't do it is the sense that, they need to support that device, and, any negative feedback because the device fails a year later would be, assume the responsibility of the district, even though it's beyond its warranty.
I was trying to see if it's like an apples to apples comparison here versus, it seems like there's a lot of unknown as to what's
There's a
making
lot
that.
of nuances in
Yeah.
this area.
Okay.
I'm very familiar with it.
Okay. It's fine. Just curious.
Any more questions? No. Okay. Next is discussion items. We've already discussed all of those.
Yeah. Little repeated.
It's either president's report or school calendar, if you want to have Ren talk about
Yeah.
the calendar.
Yes, the school calendar. The next item for discussion is the school calendar.
Lynn's going to give us an update.
Good evening. Tonight's our first night to discuss the calendar. As you know, we strive to do several things that we've done in the past. One is we wait for the Vernon Hills to finalize their calendar. Take a look at that. That impacts our breaks, winter and spring break especially. We do know they start earlier because of sports. Then we begin by surveying our teachers to look at the start date that they wish they feel that is best for them. We also look at our summer programming. This year our summer programming goes through August the 2nd, which means several of our buildings will not be ready until they get ready for the school year. So we put all of those things together. We did survey the teachers. Overwhelmingly, the teachers chose to start the same week that we start this year, which seems to be in the past practice as well. We also start to look at our professional development, our institute days, and our early release days, which the feedback from our teachers is the value of the early release days impacting our curriculum and the opportunity to do things with our teachers where we're not pulling them out of classrooms and subbing teachers in order to provide that type of professional development. This year, the law has changed. Prior to this year, we had to have 174 student days. This year, it's 176. You can no longer count conference days. So that being said, we worked today. I worked with, I know Robert and Katie this morning, as well as HEA, and taking a look at the calendar overall to ensure that we stay with the HEA agreement of 180 teacher days. We had to look for 2 additional days for students where the teachers were there. We couldn't create other days, or you have to create additional days for the teachers to be there. Our proposal that we looked at for professional development, the administrative team met last week and looked at the institute days, and one of the things that each year we are encountering is where to get the time for our teacher training for our students who have medical needs, 504 needs, IEP needs, diabetic training, and those types of things, which really need to be in place for the first day of students' attendance. We looked at our current institute day, and we came up with, we would like to add the 3rd institute day as that part of that week so that all of us are trained and ready to go for that first student day. The difference from that calendar from what we do this year is that the student start date would be on a Thursday as opposed to starting on a Wednesday. The other thing we looked at was the 6 half days, which we would recommend continuing with. Today they brought up a 7th early release day, making that the last day of school. where students would leave early, and we could use the last early release day then to prepare for the coming year, review the data with the celebrations of what we've done this year, and then add as our last day the teacher retirement and staff recognition on that last day, but maintaining the 6 half-days. So we had to come up with 2 days for student attendance that we did not have before. Our recommendations are to take the February conference day, make that a full day for teachers. Students would come for a half day on that day on the conference and have an early release. And the second one is to not have the 4th Institute Day this year. So we would have the 3 institutes and use that 4th Institute Day as a student attendance day.
So if I'm looking at it, which draft is that? 1, 2, or 3?
It's one. It would be one of the most recent one.
Okay.
I believe Bobby put a date on the most recent one of 12/13.
We
Is
have
that the one you're
numbers.
looking at?
Yeah.
Number.
So Lynn, so I'm clear,
Mhm.
you're saying that the February 28th conference day would be a half day
For students.
for students? So that would
It
be
was
a-
already a date in there for teachers.
Right, because it's like light green for no school right now.
Mhm.
So then it would be in peachy
So
orange
it's really an
color.
early release.
Right. And then we had tentatively put in the March Institute Day. We hadn't decided if that would be March or May. And you'll see that one, and that was the no student attendance day. So taking that day to get to our 176 for student attendance.
So March 12th will be an attendance day then?
Correct.
I'm so confused.
I'm curious on the December 20th.
Mhm.
Why the Friday?
Because high
Pardon?
school is off.
Is it off too?
The high school has a grading day and no student attendance.
High school gets off on the 20th.
All
That's
right.
their grading day.
Makes
To
sense.
match that day exactly.
And the high
Sorry.
school starts on the 12th, is that correct?
Yes,
Yes,
And ends on the May 22nd?
yes.
yes. They have their final days and other days that we can't count as student attendance.
Can I ask a question? Well, actually, might be on proposal 2 or 3. I was just wondering, not to like confuse things even more, but in August, I think it's kind of goofy to, I mean, I've always thought it was a little goofy to start on a Wednesday, but it's even a little goofier to me to start on a Thursday. Like, does it make sense to shift the day the teachers come back to be the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and then the students come back the 26th? Does that make any sense, instead of the students starting in the middle of a week?
That could be done.
But then you would get off on
Then
the
it just
Tuesday
extends
in
it 3
June,
more
right?
days.
Pushing it back.
You're going to push
So you
it back
push it
3 more
back-
days.
2 days.
It just doesn't seem as weird to end the school year on an odd
Tuesday?
day in the middle of the week than it does to start the school. Anyway,
No, just
Um,
wondering. I mean, I do agree
I'm
that
not
it's
dying on my sword for it. It just seems odd to me. And then my other question would be, I saw in the notes that there's the idea of now going back to what we used to do, which was do all the makeup days in June if we have snow days versus
Mhm.
turning President's Day or something like that into a school day. Do you have an explanation as to why that's preferred?
Well, we did survey the teachers on that.
Yeah, I'm wondering why they selected
So
that.
we came up with that idea together.
Mhm.
And originally it was to be able to get out earlier without having to extend 5 if you needed it. The first year we did it, it seemed to work very well. We had a snow day in there. We had 100% teacher attendance. The second year we did it, it didn't go quite as well, and then we started to hear that the teachers weren't wanting to take those in place of a snow day. So we did survey. Overwhelmingly, 75% wanted to maintain President's Day off and not use it as a makeup day. And the Casimir-Pulaski Day is about 48, 50, right in there. They're like half and half.
Okay, is my concern from a student outcome standpoint, not that I don't care about what the teachers want, because I do, and that has to be weighed here, but the kids concentrating in the last week of June versus the middle of February, totally different attention span. And we've had this issue before. It was maybe my first year on the board or the year right before that. The snow days did push into that next week in June, and then it interfered with all the camps.
Mhm.
And there was this issue of camps starting late or not having any attendance the first few days and people not getting their money back. And, you know, so I think it's risky to push into, you go past that weekend in June and then you push into the next week. Now you've got families out of town because vacations were planned and people took a gamble, and I don't love that going that late in June.
So here's a suggestion. If we look at proposal 1, which you say the overwhelmingly teachers wanted, right? We are starting on the 19th. The first 3 days are the ones that they want as teacher institute days or that we have. We go Thursday, Friday. It ends on a Thursday, which is 4th. If we do just make Kashmir Pulaski Day just one of them, because the first one they really want as precedence at 75%. So we give them that. But we do the 17th, which is Kashmir. So if it becomes a snow day, then you're just extending a day in June. So you're going till 5th. You still are not,
Going into the
going
next
into the
week.
following week,
It's a good
because you're
suggestion.
ending school on Thursday, so you ended on Friday. And you said that was anywhere almost close to 50-50 on what they wanted as
Mhm.
Kashmir.
Correct.
So we take the President's Day off, but we keep the Kashmir Pulaski as a snow day. And then if we go only by 1 day extra into the June, but we still end on a weekend, and then we go.
If you only use one snow
you
day.
Yeah,
use
if you only use, but
That's
at
the
least
big
right
if.
now we can.
No, only if you use two.
We've already used,
Use two.
if you, right, if you use 2. We've already used 1 and it's not even winter break.
But it's warming up. It's warmer in
It's
It's
gonna
gonna be real
December
warm
than
for
in
me come
November.
Friday.
Yeah.
That seems like a
Um,
really good compromise.
Mhm.
If you want to do an exact pinpoint the date, you can't. It's what can we live with? There's always a little gamble because no one can control this weather thing. And so this camp issue that Robin, you just brought up is a big one. And for families, and not to mention the day camps and
Mhm.
and all the other pieces where the high school kids are all off, so they're working.
Right.
So to try and be exact, I don't know if we can do that.
It's never exact, but usually if our last day is typically on like a Tuesday, I think, even if you stack snow days, you're still not going past that next weekend usually. Especially because the last few years we've used President's Day and Pulaski Day as makeup, so it really never pushes past that first week of June. But like I said, I mean, listen, it is what it is, and I'll put up with it. And
You have
so
to
will everybody
determine,
else, and it'll
do you
be
want
okay.
those, do you want those makeup days within the year or at the end?
I
You
mean,
know?
I always prefer within the year. Listen, full stop. As a parent, I do not actually prefer
You
within
don't
the year.
want your kids home.
No, it's not that. It's because like a lot of times we have booked a long weekend, that President's Day weekend, and then we're like, whoops, guess that's not happening, or else it's pull the kids out of school anyway. So I don't love it as a parent, but as a board member, and my job is to worry about student outcomes, I know they're not paying attention in June. Like, there's nothing going on after Memorial Day that's sinking in.
Cancel
We
school.
can't admit to that as educators.
I don't buy into that.
Not in a
You don't have to admit to
We're
it.
still
Not in a
working
public
hard.
meeting.
Joe and Mark are going to run
I didn't
all
say
the
there weren't
extra
things
days.
going on.
Yeah, we'll take the kids.
Yeah, we got it
We'll have a
covered.
movie
I didn't
in
say
the
there
gym.
weren't things going on. I don't think the kids are letting it sink in. There's always useful stuff going on.
I
But-
think then we can do the one which they overwhelmingly wanted off as on the
I think that's a good
20th of
place to
January,
start.
and then the
Yeah,
next
starting
one
point.
I think that's a good.
we make it as we use it as a
and then
snow
just
day
see
if
what
needed.
happens. Yeah.
Lynn, one more tiny logistical thing. Typically that day before school, there's an opportunity for the elementary students to come meet their teachers and
Correct.
drop off supplies. So if they're using that institute day to learn how to handle IEPs, medically sensitive children, will there still be time to plan those
They,
drop-offs?
in our conversation,
We
that
talked
would
about
still
it.
happen. What,
Okay.
I mean, my guess is that second date, but I, don't hold me to that, because I
Okay.
think we'd want to look, we also have to remember, we have to get our trainers in, especially for our diabetic trainers, that we
Right.
bring outside consultants in, and we would work that in there, but the intent is to maintain that as well as the sixth grade orientation at the middle schools, which is extremely important for
Okay.
our middle schools,
Yeah.
as well as for our elementary buildings. So what we typically did in those first 2 days, we would maintain.
Okay.
This third day is to really focus on meeting the needs of the students that have outside needs besides just the regular curriculum and instructional practices that we practice.
Gotcha.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay?
So you had, in terms of which option, you said 56% of the staff prefer the 19th start. Is the other two split?
They are. There was, I didn't bring it right up
Okay.
here. One is like 20 and one is like 30. Nobody was like, it was kind of like half.
Yeah, so it's just
It
a little
was
over
more
half,
than-
a little over half prefer the 19th.
Correct.
The reason why I'm asking about this is the other party that we also need to take into consideration are the families. Option 3 lines up best with high school. Right, so we'd be starting from a kid's point of view 4 days after the high school starts and roughly a week after the high school ends. So versus 2 weeks in option 1.
And remember that our summer programming ends on the 2nd of August.
So we need more than a week to turn a building
Well,
around.
we've got to turn, yeah. I don't know exactly, Mike would be able to, but that's a short turnaround. And also, we have a number of those teachers that have been teaching summer programming, and then they would be coming back
in a week.
in a week. Not that, I
Well,
mean,
the big difference is if, I know there's a lot of families with both kids in our district as well as the high school. By having a 2-week difference versus a 1-week difference in the high school, you're actually really extending the school year for the family, so to speak. Your high school kids starting earlier and your elementary kids are ending later. So for a whole family point of view, your school year is extended versus getting a better alignment, which allows, more time away from school as a family. So have we talked to families? I mean, I know you talked to staff what they prefer. Have we done anything to talk to families to see what they prefer?
We have not, and I would guess that there would be no consensus.
Oh, absolutely not.
I was gonna say equally split, because the people with
This
the younger
is your
elementary kids
decision.
probably
Yeah,
don't
this
have
is
a
a
high school.
board
This is a
and
board-
administrative
Well,
decision.
the difference is whether we shift it 1 week or either way,
Right.
the families that don't have kids in both districts really aren't impacted other than it's just shifted 1 week or another. They're not extending their overall time commitment to be back here after vacation. The impact is to the families that do have kids in 2 districts. So it's a net, to me, gain to families with kids in both districts, just to be better aligned, to start as close together as possible. Whereas the negative impact to kids in the district that don't have kids in high school is really, you start earlier, but you end earlier. So there's really no net negative to them. Whereas if we have a larger separation between the high school and our schedule, there is a net negative to those families that do have kids in both.
But to be little devil's advocate, you'll hear from a new group that believes that summer is being chipped
Oh, absolutely.
into and chipped
Yep.
into, and now you're starting the kids.
But you
Yes,
end
sir.
earlier,
We
so
had that
we had that conversation
Mhm.
before.
Yeah, but the
right.
weather in May is not what the weather is in August. I mean, you're not missing anything in late May or early June other than rain and 55 degrees.
Well,
but
you've got kids in high school because they're set. So,
I do.
So now,
I'm going to by the
I
time
know.
this rolls around, but I still, I think about, and this just affects me. I don't know what the other camp schedules are, but my son will get back from overnight camp on August 10th. This would have him starting that immediately next week.
Well, and I was
It's not the end of the world. It can be done, but if there was family vacation or anything like that, you are it's a really narrow window of opportunity. If you have a high schooler, then of course you're already home anyway. But if I'm thinking if you've got kids that are 5th, 4th grade, it's a good chance you don't also have a high schooler. Like, you're starting to talk about
I know a lot of 5th graders with,
it's just an example, Jason. Like, clearly you have a difference of opinion. That's fine. I'm just playing the other side of it, which is that's a pretty early August start given family vacations, weather.
it's August
day camps.
15th, the high school's starting the 12th. So it's really
Well,
relative.
I'm saying
not
for
that-
the families that also have a high schooler, but
Even without the high
for a lot of the
schoolers,
families that don't, it's
is it
a
really
very
that
early
late?
start.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are done with camp August 9th, last day. I'd be more than happy to send them to school on the 12th.
Exactly.
You said
Off you go.
you said that in public.
You're right,
You
Joe.
said that. You-
That's how I am.
You're
I
right,
mean,
Joe. There is no consensus. I'm just looking at, I understand we're not
send them
gonna
to
get consensus. Everybody's gonna have their own opinion. I'm looking at
Do you wanna vote
the
on
greater
this?
benefit
On
in terms
one and
of
three?
what,
No, this is.
No,
not
no, no.
for vote.
We're just
This is our
discussing
first
here.
Just to present you
discussion.
the
it's not on the
information
We can't
agenda to
vote
vote.
on it tonight
that
anyway.
we've
We're voting in
collected.
January. so-
I'm just looking at the impact, the negative versus the positive impact to the greatest number of families.
We can bring back 2 options.
We're
No,
gonna
they
vote
are
in
all there,
January.
right? They're
Well, we
both
don't
there.
need all of them.
Yeah, they're only 3,
Narrow
so
it-
we all
narrow it down.
You want me to bring back the early
Yeah,
and
for the
this one?
January meeting, why
January
don't we
meeting?
bring back a clear example
And
of
the
each?
regular vote is in January?
Correct.
Yeah.
Why going back to one of the things, because I didn't kind of understand it, which was the 7th half day that you're talking about? So where are
That,
we
it's
adding
not,
that?
it's not
It's not
on
in
there.
Okay.
That's not on there. We were looking at the possibility of adding
To
an
the last
additional
day.
one on the last day where students would leave early.
So which is because the last day, which right now I'm just
June
taking
4th.
calendar 1, which is the 4th, which
Correct.
would be, have been a full day,
Correct.
would now would be
Right.
a half day
For
Yes.
students.
for students.
And then we would use the other half as we're not doing a full institute day for our 4th one. One of the recommendations was to use that last one, let students leave early, use it for teachers to culminate their year and prepare for the next year, and then to add our service recognition and retiree recognition at that time as well. Just an idea.
Okay. Could you get a recommendation of that or poll the teachers on that? Because, I mean, since it's a half day, I don't think, we are actually getting science in the kids in that last day of, the last 4 hours or 3 hours of school past lunch. So if you're going to let them off early, but I would like to know, so this would be instead of, so we are not replacing anything. So I'm not getting, we are not getting,
Nope.
it's just an
It's an
add-on.
add-on,
Shaving off half a day.
right,
So we're just shaving off half a
attendance.
day of attendance for the kids.
for the last day.
Correct.
Which is a long day if you try to keep them here all day on that
I
last
mean,
day.
it's the last day, they're not doing anything.
Right.
Well,
Come
we
on,
can't
I just
say
got in trouble for
Say
saying that.
They're not doing anything. They're signing their yearbook.
Yes, for
rigorous.
So I'll
public
come back with
consumption, we
two,
keep our students
one with the
engaged
early,
all
one with
way
the late.
They sign yearbooks, I know.
And
what
the
they-
other recommendations that you made, I'll do 2 mock-ups and I'll get those to you.
Perfect,
before
and then
the
they
next
can
board
vote in
meeting.
January.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
just
Good.
leave it to a vote, yeah,
Okay,
with both recommendations.
all right, thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. But we're keeping the Kashmir Pulaski and just doing it to 1, so in both the cases.
I think everybody seemed to agree on your compromise.
Yeah,
So-
that's,
The next is
Excuse me.
consent agenda. I'm going to remove one of the items on the consent agenda for discussion. So 15.4, which is,
we've got to adjourn and come back in.
Hmm?
To regular session.
okay, sorry. So,
We have to adjourn the committee
That
of
was,
the whole.
Oh.
yeah,
I have to, do I have a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole?
I move that we adjourn the committee of the whole meeting.
Motion by Robin. Do I have a
I
second?
second.
Seconded by Wes. Do I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Victoria Helander Heiser.
Aye.
Robin Cleek.
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 6 ayes, 0 nays. I call the business meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron.
Here.
Victoria Helander Heiser. Robin Cleek,
Here.
Wes Pullen here, Matt Jacobs,
Here.
Sonali Patel.
Here. We are in a business meeting, 6 present, 0 absent. Okay,
Now you can talk about your consent.
No,
so
no, no, we got public comment.
does anybody from the public wishes to comment? Going once, twice, gone. Okay, the next is the consent agenda. I want to remove one of the items for later discussion. It is the pre-approval for meal reimbursement. So so that's 15.4 that was removed for discussion. And does anybody have anything else they would like to move out?
No, thanks.
No. So the consent agenda item consists of board meeting minutes of November 26th, expenditure report from November and December, Amex report for November, treasurer's report, personnel report. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda items as presented.
I second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Bess. Could I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron,
Aye.
Victoria Healy Heiser,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye, Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 6 ayes, 0 nays. We have action items. The first one is the authorization of working cash. Do I have a motion?
Go, man.
I move that the Board of Education authorize
You're silent.
the treasurer to loan money as needed for cash flow from the working cash fund to its other funds in anticipation of the 2018 tax receipts.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Bess. Any discussion?
Excuse me.
Could I have a roll call, please?
Sonali Patel,
Aye.
Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye, Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Victoria Healy Heiser.
Aye.
Jason Tron.
Motion passes 6 ayes, 0 nays. The next action item is resolution declaring intent to retain interest. Do I have motion?
Everybody's slow.
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution declaring intent to retain interest earnings as interest and not to accumulate as principal. Do I have a second?
I second.
Who was that?
Wes.
Motion by Sonali, seconded by Bess. Any discussion?
Quick question for Abe. What's the net difference between retaining it as interest versus retaining it as principal?
I wouldn't get too caught up in the language as it's stated. Essentially, Jason, we can spend a good time after the meeting, maybe. We can talk about this stuff further, but it would allow us to place our interest within the fund that we choose versus having to break it up into percent increments, as a percentage of fund balance.
Okay, gives us more
It
flexibility.
gives us that flexibility. Yeah.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The motion was
Great
made by
answer.
Sonali, seconded by Bess. Can I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron,
Aye.
Victoria Healy Heiser, Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye, Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 6 ayes, 0 nays. The next action item is resignation of Julie Simpson, who is now a Lake County Board member. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education accept the resignation of Julie Simpson effective December 3rd, 2018.
Motion by, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Matt. Could I have a roll call, please?
Sonali Patel,
Aye.
Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye, Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Victoria Healy Heiser,
Aye.
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Motion passes 6 ayes, 0 nays. The item that I moved out from the consent agenda item, which was pre-approval for meal reimbursement. We had a memo in our packet, and I wanted some more information regarding the conference before approval.
I can't see if Renee is here. Oh, can you just, I know
In
we
the
talked about this
shadows.
this morning, and if we could tear the Kleenex away from you, I know she has
She's been
sick.
battling.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
just a really quick, exactly what you shared with us this morning. Very simple.
So the co-teaching conference is a train-the-trainer conference, which means it's for those teachers who are already effectively co-teaching and are, don't need to be sold on it, they're already doing it, and are very interested in not only learning more about doing their job better, but also supporting others. It is a training that is only offered 3 times a year. It's offered in December in Columbus, January in San Francisco, and in July in Chicago. I've tried to get people to go to it for the last 2 years in Chicago and have no takers because people don't want to do anything during the summer. So when I asked if people could do this in December, those dates were not available for the people that were
Ready to go.
ready to go, yes.
And
The meal issue.
the cost of the conference is borne through state and federal grant money. So
Correct.
this is not a revenue stream coming from
No, it
direct
isn't.
district revenue.
And nor is the subpayments.
And nor were the subpayments. So the other question is, if we do not use this within the framework, there is a penalty that either the state or the federal government places on the grant money. I think you described it as something like 25% or so.
That's for if we try to use grant money for
Personnel.
personnel.
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
really, it has to be used for these type of activities.
No, I understand.
The question comes, we have an allocated amount, and due to the nature of where this is, the per diem cost for each individual was extremely low, would have forced people to dip into their own pockets for quite a bit of extra money for meals. We were asking for a one-time, I think you were asking for a one-time increase of $10 per day for meal expense,
Correct.
for
How-
just this trip.
How many people are going,
7?
7.
and for how many days?
It is Tuesday through Friday.
So you're talking 4 days, so it's $40 a person.
200 and some dollars.
Yeah, $280.
And it's paid for by the
We'll probably leave
grant.
Monday night because the conference
I don't think
starts.
this increase is paid for by the grant.
Tuesday
I think
morning.
that was the whole point.
No,
No,
this is paid for by the
it
grant.
might be, if you can do the numbers, but whatever, reimbursement for the meals are,
Everything was in the approval process
Okay,
that I went
so
through the
then you're
state.
right.
So meals,
It will also be
transportation,
approved.
sub costs,
So even the sub costs and
all
everything
of
is,
it was
everything is
in-
in.
Yeah.
all of that was taken into account when requesting approval from the state.
so we're just trying to give. a
So this
little bit more
request, even
support.
though it's addressed to the board, isn't really,
Because it's in our
Doesn't impact
policy,
us.
so that's
Yeah.
why they have
It's
to
in-
request
Correct.
us to grant
oh,
it before.
okay, okay,
Even
I
though
get
it's
it.
approved.
And we didn't ask for
Gotcha.
Against
policy
your
change,
policy.
a one-time.
Gotcha.
One-time thing.
item.
I would hate
Excuse
to, just because it was requested from the state and the state approved it, to not have it follow our policy as well.
Gotcha,
Due diligence.
thank you.
Any more questions regarding that?
Let the poor woman go.
Don't get,
Keep
don't
her
get
here for
close
the
to
whole
me.
time.
Keep
Just
your-
stay.
And keep a safe distance, please.
So can I have a motion to pre-approve for the meal reimbursement?
One-time,
One-time meal reimbursement
pre-approval
for,
for an increase of $10 per diem.
okay, so let me write this down. Pre-approval for
One-time
one-time increase in per diem of $10 for the co-teaching conference
in San Francisco.
in San Francisco.
It's good.
Okay.
Okay, so you should read the motion then.
Yeah, go ahead. You just wrote it down.
I would
Okay.
do it, but I can't read your writing.
No, but I just want to know, does anybody have questions? Okay, so I make the motion that we pre-approve for one time the increase in per diem of $10 for the co-teaching conference in San Francisco. Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion by Sonali, seconded by Wes. Can I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Victoria Healer Heiser. Robin Cleek.
Aye.
West Pole and I. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 6 ayes, 0 nays. Thank you so much, Renee, for staying and answering my questions. Okay, now I got myself up there. Does the superintendent have any reports?
Happy holidays.
Yeah,
Right?
we do
Isn't that
not.
it, Joe?
That
I
is
think,
our
you know,
report.
it's amazing. 6 months have gone by, almost our anniversary.
What, no gift?
Anniversary.
Yeah,
Like
I know.
halfway until you're done.
Pats on the back.
Yeah.
Okay. So we do not have any report.
Unless you have one.
I have, do I have any
President's report.
reports?
President's report.
My president's report, happy holidays to everybody. Thank you so much for the first 6 months, first semester, trimester, and be safe, safe travels, everybody going anywhere, and we'll see you back here January 6th, 7th, whatever that Monday is.
7th.
7th. Thank you. Nothing else?
Adjourn.
Big
Okay, everybody.
congratulations
Well,
to
we have
lots of victories for the Poms and cheerleading squads at the middle
Yes.
schools. So
Oh,
big congratulations.
Yes,
Lots of
congratulations to the
conferences going
Palms and
on.
cheerleading. And thank you, Leslie, for posting everything so we feel up to date even though we don't get there. But that's it.
We are moving the closed session that was originally scheduled prior to the
Yes.
board meeting to the end. It's not on the agenda in that form, but prior to the end. So
Yeah.
we will adjourn to closed session.
So we'll adjourn to closed session. Do I have? We should let people, give them time to leave, so then we can make a motion to go into closed session.
Doesn't matter.
You can do it now.
No, you can let people filter
Yeah.
out. We can socialize for a minute or two.
Thank you for coming. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.